Assignment 14.1. This is part 1 of a 3 parts on creating a complex shape in Illustrator using the Shape Builder tool, layers, combining shapes, and ultimately combining layers. The image I've chosen for this one is the International Biohazard Warning Symbol. You quite frequently see it in hospitals and doctors' offices where various types of discarded materials need to be handled with care due to infectious natures. We are going to go all the way from a simple JPEG trace layer to this image with its yellow background. I have broken the presentation into 3 parts so that the information is easier to digest. It can get a little complicated. Hopefully this will help you when it comes to creating your personal logo here in a week or so. So then, first I had to go and find my trace layer image. Yours will be provided to you here on Canvas. Download it and place it in your peripheral drive for safekeeping in a folder marked Assignment 14.1. Mine was in my Assignment 14 folder, so I have gone in and opened it. When it opens, it's on a layer of its own. We need to secure that layer so that we don't work on it. Remember, you have to create a layer and then do Place Image. So I will create a layer named for it called Trace Layer and lock it and dim it 30%. It should now look like this. Now we can start working. First, I create another layer so that I have some place to begin working. My first task is going to be recreating the pointed crescents. So I will zoom in and set my fill to nothing and my stroke to black. Next, using my shape tool, I will select the ellipse tool or the circle. This is simply an ellipse that is constrained to a circle. Or rather, all circles are ellipses, and what makes them ellipses is the degree to which they are constrained or not. If I hold down both my Alt-Option key and my Shift key simultaneously, the circle will open directly over the spot where I choose to create it from. In this case, right in the middle of the top pointed crescent. Shift constrains the ellipse to a pure circle. Alt-Option ensures that the circle opens from the center as opposed to the side. Open a circle that approximates the overall size of the outside of the pointed crescent. Don't worry about getting it exact. We'll come back and tweak it. Using my Selection tool, upper left corner of the tool panel, you can manipulate the circle until you get it to fit the pointed crescent. Caution: be sure to hold down your Shift key while adjusting the overall size in order to ensure that your circle remains a pure circle and not an elliptical form. Once you're done, and with the shape still highlighted and active, that is, make sure that the bounding box is still showing, go to Edit, Copy, and then Edit, Paste. This will create an exact duplicate of the circle that you just created on the same layer. Here is an example where Illustrator and Photoshop are different. In Photoshop, every time you copy and paste, Photoshop creates a new layer. In Illustrator, you have to decide when to create new layers. There are many reasons for this, but for the moment it's fine that both circles are on the same layer. That is exactly what we want. Now, using your Selection tool, manipulate the second circle to fit inside the pointed crescent. Ultimately, you are going to want them to overlap at the very top. If I zoom in, you can see the degree to which you want to overlap. It isn't exact match for the tracing layer below, but we are creating a new complex shape based off from that trace layer. Sometimes close is good enough. Notice how the overlap corresponds to where the crescents stop. Now we're going to duplicate that overall shape using another tool. First though, we are going to need to combine both the new circle and the first circle into a grouped shape. We need to do this in order to edit away what we don't want. So with your Selection tool, first select the highlight one circle and then the other. It does not matter which one you select first, just be sure that the bounding boxes and the shape indicators light up for both. Now go to Object, Group. Both the rings should now be joined together as one object on the same layer, layer 2. Next, we are going to be using a rather new tool in Illustrator. The task of doing what's next used to be a lot more complicated, and they figured out how to make this a lot easier. Go to your tool panel and choose the Shape Builder tool. In my screen view, here it is 9 tools down from the top on the left side. If you hover over it with your cursor, it should indicate Shape Builder tool. Now once you select this tool and hover out over your art board, you will notice that when you pass over your shape, you will see a plus sign. This indicates that the Shape Builder tool wants to allow you to combine the two shapes. However, you want to subtract one shape from another. By holding down your Alt key and dragging it over your combined shape from the outside at the top to the inside of the inner circle, you will get this. Notice that it is indicating that you have selected the inside of the inner circle and are telling Illustrator that you want to subtract that shape from the outer circle. Once you release your mouse, the parts where the two circles are combined will disappear. Trust me, this is a lot easier than it used to be, and you'd have to go through a lot of other stuff. So now we'll go back out of this so that we can see the whole crescent. What we now have is 1/3 of our 3 overlapping crescents completed. Next, we are going to copy and duplicate this shape 2 more times, but first we are going to fill it in. So with my shape still highlighted, I will go to my stroke and fill boxes at the bottom of the tool panel. Next to stroke and fill panels in the upper right of the 2 boxes, you will see a bidirectional arrow. This means that you can alternate between the 2 boxes and apply the attributes of one box to another. In this case, you want to tell the fill box to fill with black. If you click on that arrow, the fill will turn to black. Now before proceeding, click that bidirectional arrow again and it'll turn to the stroke and back to black again. You want to create shapes that have both a fill and a stroke of black. Now make sure to highlight the whole shape. Just in case, use your directional tool and drag open a box around the entire shape, and the whole thing should now light up with whatever color your layer indicates that it is. In my case, layer 2 is a red bounding box. With it selected, go to Edit, Copy, and then Edit, Paste. Now you will have 2 crescent shapes, and they are both on the same layer, but you can manipulate them independently by using your direction tool to click on just a portion of each one. Your first crescent is already where you want it to be, so leave that one alone. Using your selection tool, drag the other crescent over to where it should be on the left side of the trace layer. You can then rotate it into position. If you hover just outside of the bounding box with your cursor, you will see a bidirectional arrow appear. This is the equivalent of what Photoshop did when you went to Transform Rotate, but is now done live inside the artboard without having to go back up to the taskbar for any further direction. Adjust the second crescent accordingly. Now, with the second crescent highlighted, repeat the Edit, Copy, Edit, Paste function and manipulate the third crescent into position. Nearly done now with part 1. Now, with layer 2 still active, using your selection tool, drag open a box that surrounds all 3 crescents. Be careful not to move any of them while doing this. With all of them highlighted, go to Object, Group. All 3 shapes now are one object. This concludes part 1. Next, we will create the inner circle and the white highlights inside of that crescent that breaks the circle into 3 parts. That's part 2.